Well, I would say that 75% approximately of the demand which we get for properties is for small holdings from people wanting to come and live in the country probably for the very first time.
We haven't got any experience, and I'm sure that we shall have to change when we find things don't work out.
Also, we shall have the objective of becoming self-sufficient as soon as possible, and this will dictate what we have on the farm. Poultry will be a must. Chickens, ducks, and a goose for Christmas.
Comments from somebody who intends to make a new life for himself and his family in the countryside. But what sort of countryside is he aiming at? Well, on the face of it, one which hasn't changed for hundreds of years. But underneath that apparently stable landscape, there's rapid and sometimes almost frightening social change occurring. Rural depopulation, of course, is nothing new. It's been going on ever since the Industrial Revolution. But the reduction in the numbers of people living and working in the countryside in the last few years has now reached a critical point. Over the last 25 years or so, no less than 30% of the farms in Wales have disappeared through amalgamation. Now, if you'd like to project that figure forward, you'll find that by the time my grandson is my age, there'll only be one Welsh farm left. Well, of course, all this has had its effect on village life. The Reverend Moelwyn Merchant has been the vicar of a typical Welsh village for 5 years.
I would say that this village of Llandewi Brefi is probably about as characteristic as one can get. And I think its structure could be described probably best by saying that it's totally encircled by quite well-to-do farms, but which are pretty self-sufficient in labour with the new mechanisation. And then what is virtually an urban proletariat of something like 350 people in the centre. Now, that is an ageing proletariat. The average age here, I would say, was probably about 55 or so. So what can we do about this? I feel terribly strongly that in the rural areas, you can't introduce industry that will live naturally there unless it's rural-based industry. We did have a creamery here of the Milk Marketing Board, which occupied about 80 people, which is, of course, a substantial proportion of the population. I tried to get that replaced with a slaughterhouse, but failed because in West Wales we are not really sufficiently central. So we are faced with the sad fact that it's an ageing population with some of the liveliest young minds leaving the area for the great city centres.
It's not entirely a one-way traffic. Some of the city's lively young minds, physical education teacher Julie Casper amongst them, would like to move to the countryside. She and her husband want to take part in what is the major rural industry, farming. Until last February, Dr. Peter Casper was a marketing executive in a large electronics firm at Abercynon near Pontypridd.
The organisers of the Scottish exhibition,
The Caspers have taken the big decision to make a complete break with their careers and urban lives. They admit a lack of know-how, but despite this, they're moving to a small holding in West Wales.
Well, I was brought up in the country until the age of 10 or 11. So I used to enjoy a child's country life, I suppose, the fresh air and freedom, really, of living in the country. When I was at college, I took a rural science course, but that's perhaps theoretical horticulture with a little agriculture, but it's very limited.
What about you, Dr. Casper?
Well, very limited, even more so. Really, apart from living on the outskirts of towns with open fields behind, very little indeed.
But no practical commercial experience at all, really, then?
No, no.
What sort of preparations have you made to get yourselves ready for this big change into a different career altogether?
Well, in some ways, not a lot, but in other ways, particularly in terms of reading, we've read as many agricultural books as we can, talk to people when the opportunity presents itself.
Have you really thought out just what you're going to have to give up?
Well, I think it'll be an awful lot of hardship, and we won't be able to live in the same sort of way that we live now, but we hope that it'll be worth it to be able to rule our own lives to a greater extent, I hope, and to make decisions which affect us more within our own hands, and perhaps this will compensate for, well, a harder life.
Yes, and it will be for our own benefit and nobody else's benefit, well, including the children, of course. This, I suppose, is a reaction from having worked in industry for a number of years, where what you do is very rarely for your own benefit. And the thought of escaping of some of the officialdom and the bureaucracy I find very attractive.
Can you give me some idea what sort of farm it is?
The farm is 37 acres. It rises from approximately 300 foot to 500 foot, fairly steeply. So there are more or less two level plains. Being in West Wales and at that altitude, as you can understand, the rainfall is fairly high, which rules out arable work for a profit. I'm hoping that we might be able to grow a few oats or barley to feed the cattle, but I think that's about all.
How much of the ground is rough?
Very little.
Very little. About 2 acres of woodland, or fern and woodland.
Certainly no more than 2 acres.
Yes. I think it's important that we should join in with the community life down there for children's sake and in order to be part of the community, because I enjoy the community life. I enjoy knowing people and talking to people. I think, in fact, in rural areas there's a far greater community commitment, if you like. People are far more interested and care more for their neighbours than they do in urban life.
We filmed at the Caspers farm this March as they started to tackle the immense job which they openly acknowledge will require all the help a friendly neighbourhood can give them. 3 years ago, we filmed Jim and Anne Robinson, then starting a self-sufficiency project on a 22-acre smallholding. They too had very little experience at the back of them. This was how Jim Robinson explained his plans.
Obviously, we've got to get the place on its feet for a start. We then must provide for ourselves and produce a surplus to pay taxes and be some use to the community, like keeping other people in employment with providing us in clothes. And above all, I suppose, trying not to be too greedy.
You say you want as far as possible to be self-sufficient. What exactly do you mean by this?
Well, so far we've got pigs, so we produce our own bacon. We have calves, geese, our own poultry. Chickens, we have our own eggs. There's enough land there to grow cereals. We already make our own bread. Anne grinds corn, and so we can go, I suppose, 90% of the way. Things like sugar, coffee, and so forth. Goodness sake, you've got to have some fun in life. You've got to have some of the things you enjoy. We'll obviously have to buy in.
But your need for cash really is quite small.
Well, I don't know. At the moment, the need for cash seems to be quite enormous. Yeah. Hopefully, it will become, the rate of expenditure slowing down.
But Jim Robinson had to compromise with those original plans. He now alternates his days between his small holding and the Sea Link car ferry between Fishguard and Rosslare, on which he's an engineer officer. He works merchant navy hours, so his time off is lumped together. It's an arrangement that suits the running of a small holding.
It is very necessary, if one is taking on a derelict property, to have a competence. A competence can either be measured in money or in skills. If you have the skills, you can probably make the money away from the property. Or if you have the money, you can work on the property and you have sufficient cash to go outside and pay for your everyday needs. But you must have the competence. So if you haven't got either money or technical skills, the answer is don't try it.
That's the philosophy of the argument. So what was Jim Robinson's Achilles heel?
Well, I suppose basically a lack of money. We thought in the first place sufficient. It was limited, but we thought adequate. But devaluation came along. It just didn't affect us, of course, it affected everybody else. And then, of course, there was the increased cost of fuel. And this depleted what we had substantially.
Well, I suppose the really important thing at the end of the day is just how happy and satisfied you are with your life. How do you feel about it?
Oh, I really couldn't be happier. I find it's most delightful. I very often look up from the gardening and think, well, what a marvellous place and what a gorgeous thing to be doing.
And you share that view as well?
Oh, I wouldn't do anything else. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to be permitted to go on doing what I am doing. I think it's great.
Also 3 years ago, I spoke to another couple who'd just started livestock farming. A team effort because the pots for the produce could be made by the wife who's been trained in sculpture. The livestock, of course, were bees. Brian and Anna Gemmell had an urban background. He worked in architecture. Their aims were commercial. They intended to make a living from bee farming. But at the same time, they intended, so far as possible, to live off the land.
Well, not really self-sufficiency, it's a support programme. We grow our own vegetables, we produce our own dairy products, basically. Further than that, we haven't got the time to go. We have to have a car, we live in the country, there are no buses. We want to buy records, the record player. We want to enjoy other things, books, you know. You can't do this if you're self-sufficient and not making any money.
And would you expect to cost all the things that you do in self-sufficiency terms to see whether, in fact, there was a more economic way of doing it?
I would expect them to not cost me too much. The goats that we keep don't make us a profit. It's an expensive way of buying milk, but they're fun to keep.
And the goats are still fun. Nevertheless, it's been a struggle for the Gemmells, but they now have an established bee farming business and are holding their own. Looking back today, Brian can see where he wasn't as well prepared as he might have been.
We didn't know as much about beekeeping as we could have known. We knew a fair bit, but we didn't know the finer details. Our business knowledge was lacking. As time's gone by, this has improved. We're undercapitalised. This means that one does each job half by half only, and then has to do the proper job next time round.
In terms of the physical work, how hard have you found that?
13 hour day, 5-6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. You have to discipline yourself not to work on a Sunday.
In many ways, you're not alone. There are many small industries trying to get themselves established in the countryside. Is there anything that could be done to help you to get going?
Some way round being undercapitalised, being short of security. I think that's our biggest setback at the moment. Would I go back? No, never. Why, I don't know. I'm my own boss. But that's not enough to keep me here. I work very hard, that should send me back. I don't know, one's just committed oneself to this thing. My business is my hobby. I suppose that's really the answer.
How many there, Anna?
Two little grandsons.
Well, both those families have established themselves in the countryside, but they've both found it hard, and they've both had to adapt and learn from their mistakes. But what about others? Let's just suppose that you're one of the people who's always dreamed of the good life. What would you find when you started your search for a place in the sun? Well, for a start, you'd have plenty of company. One firm of estate agents in West Wales reckons that 3/4 at least of all the inquiries they receive are for small holdings. And those applications are usually from people wanting to leave towns.
I think that quite often they don't appreciate the problems involved in purchasing a small holding. The Agricultural Mortgage Corporation advance money, but only on viable farming units, and the building societies only advance on residential property. And of course the applicant has got to be in a salaried position to service the repayments. So small holdings do fall in between those two categories.
A mortgage probably is the first hurdle to overcome, and then there's the money to stock and equip the holding. What attitude might you find in a bank?
Well, our attitude is based on normal commercial considerations. Whilst we have every sympathy with them in their aim to lead a simple, self-sufficient life, well, we have an economic function to perform, and it's from that angle that we really look at them. But we look at it without any prejudice or any bias in any way. It's an open-minded attitude.
Well, you must see quite a lot of these people coming into the countryside. Have you got any advice for them?
Yes, I think it's highly important that they are really aware of the problems which they will meet. There are so many factors within agriculture which are outside of the operator's control. And they should be prepared to live up to their aim, which is self-sufficient. And in my opinion, borrowing and being self-sufficient seem to be contradictory in objectives.
Mention the term self-sufficiency, and in the next breath you have to mention the name of the internationally renowned John Seymour, author of books like The Complete Book of Self-Sufficiency, The Fat of the Land, and his latest, about to be published, I'm a Stranger Here Myself. His West Wales farm is now run by young people who try to live and work the land according to his precepts. Hundreds write to him and visit the farm, hoping to learn the formula for escape from a burdensome way of life.
Well, of course, these people who come from the town and try and make a life in the country, they have it extremely tough and everything's packed against them. And the ones that succeed, and quite a number of them do manage to succeed, only succeed because they work really hard and they've got enormous enthusiasm. But what they should remember before they start is that they'll still need money. You can't live without any money at all. And they should make sure that they've got some means of earning some. They should also know a little bit about what they're going to do. They're going to grow food. Well, they ought to know a little bit about it, and they can't just get it out of a book.
The countryside is primarily a place of business, and you might well think it's easier for the aspiring young countryman to find his niche in it. But it's not so. For him, too, opportunities are getting fewer. Since the war, 1/3 of all Welsh farms have been amalgamated. Only a quarter of those remaining are available for renting, and the average price of land is now £1,000 per acre. At that level, it's impossible to pay interest and make a profit. Hevin Davis again.
Well, farms, viable farming units, are usually purchased by bona fide farmers, not people who are going into farming for the very first time. The poorer farms are sometimes bought for amalgamation purposes by local farmers, who then in turn sell off the house and probably the rather limited range of outbuildings, plus a paddock or two as a small holding.
So established farmers are making the running. Why is this?
Well, the deciding factor very often is the borrowing requirement in relation to that purchase. And if the farmer's current position is a low borrowing position, he can then average the interest charges on the acquired land together with any, if any, he has on his established farm to give a low financial commitment per acre over the whole.
So this puts him in a very, very strong position compared with anybody else.
Yes, especially with anybody else who requires borrowed finance.
It's mainly farmers, then, in their rush to increase farm size, who have caused the recent huge escalation of land prices. When we joined the EEC 5 years ago, British land looked cheap compared with the European equivalent. This led almost immediately to some window shopping, if not bargain hunting, a point I put to our estate agent.
We've been led to believe that some of the high prices we've heard about are caused by continental buyers coming over here. What sort of an impact do they have?
Well, we do have a large number of applications from the continent, from Dutch and German, but the impact is rather small. It's got to be taken in perspective. I think that in the end it boils down to no more than about 3% who actually succeed in purchasing.
Have they really affected the prices very much?
Well, marginally they're bound to have done, but I don't think that is a cause for concern at this stage.
But the very presence of continental buyers for our prime land has caused concern, and so has the interest which the so-called institutional buyers have shown in farmland in the last 10 years or so. They're the pension funds, the insurance companies, unit trusts, all city-based organisations. Agricultural advisor to the Electricity Pension Fund, which bought the 30,000-acre Corder estate in West Wales for £4 million, is Sir Francis Pemberton. He told me why the institutions are buying into the countryside.
Well, you have to look at the overall return on the land. You can't manufacture any more land. And pension funds feel that everybody now has a pension, that they want to have a mix in their portfolio. Now, in the past, they have bought commercial properties, shops, offices and things of this sort, and they feel they would like to have a little mix into one of the most efficient industries in the country, namely farming. And so that is why the institutions have gone into agricultural land as a mix in their portfolio.
But if the return on agricultural land proves to be only 1 or 2%, this doesn't seem to be a very attractive thing from the point of view of the pensioners or the unit trust holders, whoever it may be.
Well, the return may be low at the moment, but with inflation you can't make any more land, and we think that the return on the earning capacity of the land will keep up with inflation better than some other forms of investment.
Would it change the attitude of the institutions if that capital growth disappeared for some reason?
Well, of course, if the capital growth were to disappear, it would put a different picture on it, but I can't see any reason why the capital growth should disappear. I think that you've got to be careful what you are doing, what you are buying, and buy it at the right price. Look at the earning capacity of the land and look at all the side benefits which there are from the ownership of land, making it available to people to enjoy the countryside now that everybody has much more leisure than they did years ago.
Is there any attraction in the institutions perhaps farming the land themselves?
I don't personally want to see the institutions entering into the farming field in any big way. Ownership of the land, management of the land, and looking after the people that are there. And I would think there's a really good future for these estates owned by the fund in Wales.
Sir Francis Pemberton. Indeed, the institutions could be a source of rented farms in the future. They could also provide capital. They have vast sums available. One pension fund alone has £1 million to invest every day. But the worries remain. They're absentee owners, their ultimate responsibility lies away from the countryside, and doubts remain as to whether circumstances may not force them into farming the land themselves. The government too is worried. Last summer, the Northfield Committee was set up to inquire into trends in land ownership, and it's still taking evidence. Government interest, of course, is nothing new in this subject. Ever since the 20s, we've had the Small Holdings Acts, which enable county councils to put the bottom rungs into the farming ladder by buying land and renting it out to young farmers. Many in the industry would like to see these acts rejuvenated. That includes our banker.
The Small Holdings Act could be revised and made possibly more workable, especially in areas where authorities at the moment are not being particularly enthusiastic. We could devise something on the same lines as the Netherlands, whereby they have an organisation which has 4 prongs, 2 of which buy to resell and buy to let land. But even then, that organisation would need powers to buy at an economic price, to let at an economic price if the new entrant is to have a chance of succeeding.
And this would, of course, mean government intervention in land purchase?
Well, I cannot see it happening otherwise unless the agricultural industry itself undertakes the responsibility, and it would take a lot of working out to devise a scheme acceptable to all within the industry.
Of course, it's not only those who service farming who have a point of view. The farmers and farm workers' organisations have strong opinions as well. First, the farmers.
Whatever the outcome of their findings, one thing must be very, very certain indeed, that it's only right and proper that British land should be vested in British nationals. But without waiting for their findings, there are many other steps that government could take now very quickly. We would like to see easier access to initial capital, and that capital could be provided at very much reduced interest rates. The smaller holdings do not qualify for government assistance that is generally available to larger farms. And this is another step, of course, that could be taken by enabling the smaller holders to qualify for the full range of grants available. With regard to the availability of small holdings as opposed to the availability of capital and interest rates, this raises the issue of county council small holdings, which we consider to be very, very important in this particular sphere. And we would like to see far more individual small holdings made available by local county councils to young farmers so that they can start the farming ladder as tenants, and possibly later on in life, having built up their reserves, they would be able to progress from there into owning their own holdings.
As might be expected, the farm workers have a more radical proposal.
My union policy has been for the public ownership of land for over 20 years now. I qualify this by saying that we don't mean to take over the farms to physically farm them, but this is public ownership of land, so that one can control the use of land, and that the main motivation is not profit, but for the efficiency and well-being of agriculture. One could affect amalgamations far more easily, a readjustment of boundaries, and generally improve the well-being of the industry and make land available for a number of people that are in the industry now, who we have over the years tended to lose because there has been no farming ladder as such. For the skilled farm workers who have spent 10, 15, 20 years in the industry to continue in the industry. I think over the years we've tended to attract into agriculture the wrong kind of people, people who were from the completely alien background with no experience, and we've allowed the experienced workers to go away, and consequently they've gone away and taken their families with them, and this has continued the drift from the land because of the lack of opportunity, and of course in many cases to get better wages.
Well, you can see the sincerity of belief that will be put to the Northfield Committee, and who knows what their recommendations will be when they report in September. What we do know is that the countryside can't wait much longer. Farms are expanding steadily, fewer working people, so villages become weaker, their inhabitants older. At the same time, we have this tremendous pressure of people, young people in the country, people of all ages from the towns, willing to give their eye teeth for a bit of land. Farms have got bigger because that way they're more economic, and coupled with mechanisation, that means that our farm productivity per man is the envy of Europe. But our productivity per acre leaves much to be desired. And it's acres we're short of, not men. Just think of the wasted labour in towns today, overmanning in industry, yet 1.5 million people unemployed. And this at a time when what our countryside needs is lots of fully active people. Well, perhaps we should settle some of the underemployed people in the countryside and help to revitalise the rural communities. John Seymour has positive views.
You see, the quality of life in both city and country would benefit enormously if there was a migration of people from the city to the country. 100 years ago, there was this tremendous migration the other way. People, and all the best people and the intelligent people leaving the country and crowding into these great cities. And now the quality of life in the cities has suffered. There are too many people in the cities, and there are not enough people in the country to make a real social life. And that's why I'd like to see a reverse flow. I'd like to see people coming back from the cities and really becoming countrymen, not just becoming commuters or city people who pretend to be countrymen but aren't, but real country people again. And it's possible.
Well, now, you've been well placed to see the changing pattern in the countryside in the last few years. Is this going to happen if we continue as we are now?
No, the present policy and the present economic climate is all against it, and it's going to force more people into the cities. The countryside's getting even more and more denuded of human beings. In the end, there's got to be a political solution to this. In the end, the people of this country have got to demand their birthright, which is the access to their own countryside. We've got to put a stop to this business of farms getting bigger and bigger and bigger and being bought up by corporations and foreigners and people like that. We've got to get forward to the state when human beings come back to the land of Wales and England and farm it properly as it used to be farmed when I was a boy, and really produce the food themselves by the hands of human beings.
On the other hand, people have complained about quality of life in the countryside as well, haven't they?
People mustn't just come to the countryside with the idea of getting something out of it. They must come here with the idea of giving something to it, putting something into it, bringing crafts, skills, things that we need in the countryside, bringing fun and prosperity and social activity and social life back to the countryside. Those are the sort of people we need.
It's almost an accident of birth, whether you live in town or country. For the rural born, there's ample opportunity to opt for the more sophisticated urban life. But for those who wish to remain in the countryside, or the urban dweller who would like to go and live there, the chances are getting fewer every year. If equality of opportunity in society means anything, it should surely include that opportunity to make the countryside your place for your life and work. The families we've seen are all struggling against great odds and with little help to make a place for themselves in the countryside. If it's hard for them today, before long it'll be near impossible for anyone. As a nation, we think nothing of spending public money to improve the industrial structure. Isn't it time we thought it equally important to support the social structure in the countryside and provided the money and resources to influence that as well?
I'm sure that in the next few years we shall find some very difficult times. It'll be quite a struggle, and I'm sure that sometimes we shall think, let's get back to the easy way of the 9 to 5, but I think the quality of life for the children here in this environment is far better. They've got the fresh air and the streams, and they can climb the trees, and I think they'll learn more about living, about absorbing their environment, about understanding things, people and animals.